My big fat night of tilt and how to make sure you never have one. So in this video, I'm going to tell you about probably the time I tilted the worst playing poker, or certainly the most damaging time. I don't know why I'm doing this, probably to entertain you. No, I do know why, to be honest. I want to make sure that tilt and your emotions aren't part of your poker as much as possible. And when I say tilt, I'm going to talk to you about big, huge tilt. However, it applies to every degree of tilt. And I think all of us, because we're human beings, are affected by emotion when we play. And even just a little bit of tilt can be a big problem, which I'll talk to you about in this video. So let's get into my pain, shall we? And give you some Schadenfreude for the win. So you're going to be able to enjoy my misery here. It's fine. Absolutely fine. I'm also going to enjoy it. Time heals all wounds. You'll also learn how to control your emotions and stop tilt before it happens, so you never have a night as bad as mine. Time doesn't heal the wounds, by the way. I lied. This is going to be very painful for me to talk about. All right, not painful, but maybe a bit disquieting. So what happened? Well, I was playing Pot Limit Omaha. You might say that's my first mistake. One of my favourite games of poker, and I was just kind of getting good at it. I was beating the low to middle limits and kind of playing towards the middle limits, having learnt it about a year earlier, and I was getting ready to move up to the mid-stakes permanently, but I'd had a frustrating month. Now, if you played Pot Limit Omaha, you'll know that a frustrating month is easy to have. It's a game where you can do very well if you have a good edge over your opponents, but you are going to have some swings. So I'd had a difficult month, partly because I wanted to move up, and partly because I was playing in games where I knew I had a big edge, but I wasn't winning. And I'm sure you know that feeling of playing against players you know that you're kind of better than without being rude about it. These are the facts. But you're not actually winning because, you know, you're just running bad. You're just getting unlucky. So, and we'll talk about triggers for tilt later on, but definitely one of the triggers was I was a little bit frustrated with my poker generally at the time. So the session started out fine. I actually played well for a couple of hours. But lost, let's say 2 or 3 buy-ins. This was a little while ago now, a few years ago. So some of the details are sketchy, but not the really bad bits. But I definitely started playing well. Then I had a quick run of close pots that I lost in a row. Now, this can happen in Pot Limit Omaha. You can have a lot of kind of 55, 45s where you get all the money in and it doesn't go your way. And I had, you know, a run of those. And before you knew it, I was on full blown tilt, the really big bad kind of tilt, the kind of tilt where you're smashing your fist against the desk, you're saying a lot of bad words out loud even though you're on your own. And I don't know about you, but when this used to happen to me, thankfully it doesn't happen anymore because I sorted it out, but you actually feel that kind of red mist rising. You actually feel your face sort of throbbing. It's a very sort of visceral feeling, and it's also a feeling where you're not in control. You actually are not thinking clearly at all. You're just thinking about your anger. That's what full-blown tilt is for me. After that point, when I started losing and lost a few pots in a row, a lot of the night is a blur, if I'm honest. And not because it was a while ago, but because of that tilt. I do remember berating a player in chat, which I never, ever do. Just really getting incredibly angry with him. And I don't recommend you ever do that, but I did it. I do remember not stopping, even though I knew I wasn't thinking clearly, just clicking buttons. You know, I went maybe 2 hours or more beyond where I planned to end the session. Probably not even, you know, that thing where you kind of chase losses. I wasn't even really doing that. I was just kind of trying to play through the anger and just trying to, you know, defy what was happening to me, but not actually making any good decisions. And I remember the horrible feeling of stopping hours of losing later, updating my tracker, looking at my bankroll, and honestly feeling sick. Actually feeling physically unwell, kind of blurry, and got into bed and probably reached for some alcohol. Don't recommend that either. But I do remember this horrible, horrible feeling of, you know, what have I done? It was bad and I made it worse and I was out of control, and going to sleep feeling that way. And the next day I couldn't shake that feeling of disgust. I was writing this presentation for you and I couldn't think of a better word than disgust. I was ashamed because it was my own fault. I'd done it and I couldn't get the money back, right? It takes a long time to build up a bankroll in poker. It should take a long time to destroy it. I'd managed to lose 19 buy-ins. 19. That number will never leave me. I doubt it. I seriously hope it'll never happen again. But basically, almost a third of my bankroll went in a night. Certainly taught me you need a lot of buy-ins to play Pot Limit Omaha. And you know what? Like I said, it was my fault. I was responsible. I would have had a losing session whatever I'd done because I was losing at the start. But if I'd played a normal session, I'd have probably lost 4 or 5 buy-ins, 5 or 6 at worst. I lost 3 times that. So why did it happen was my question. I came to one conclusion. It could never happen again. Thankfully, I've not had a big problem with tilt and emotions in my poker career, but it became clear to me after that night that there was some stored up stuff I actually needed to address and deal with, because I couldn't be a winner in poker if the possibility of that kind of tilt was going to happen. So the bad news is it could happen to you. I thought this couldn't happen to me. I've been winning in poker for a decent amount of time, for years actually, before this night happened. And I thought that, yeah, occasionally my emotions would enter my game, but nothing serious. I certainly wouldn't have believed I could have done it before I did. But the reality is, and I'm sure you know, poker pushes your buttons, right? You get unlucky in hands, you get unlucky in a run of hands, people aren't good at it beat you. It can be a very frustrating game, and it is super easy to become affected by your emotions. Whether you're affected big style like I was, or whether you're just affected a little bit, you're not human if poker doesn't push your buttons a little bit. So it's vitally important to be on top of this, because it doesn't have to be full-blown tilt to cost you your results. And that's because of how poker is set up. Poker is actually a very close game. Your edge is normally never that big. Even if you feel like you're way superior to the players you're playing against, it's very unlikely that when you break it down mathematically, you'll have more than a 20% edge. And that's a really big edge in poker. More normal after the rake is to have like a 5% edge or a 10% edge if you're winning in a game. What that means is if you even get a little bit upset or a little bit angry or a bit distracted or even a bit tired or whatever, but especially if you take things personally when you play, any of that emotional stuff is enough to remove your edge and turn you from a winning player into a losing player. So if you're sitting here thinking, oh, that's a funny story about Nick losing all his money and going a bit mental, it's quite a funny story, but I would never do that. Well, maybe you will never do that, but that doesn't mean that you're not costing yourself money by having your emotions affect your decision making when you're playing. So you need to be honest with yourself right now and ask yourself, am I ever affected by my emotions in any way? Even if it's just to become a little bit frustrated, or even it's to become a little bit bored or a little bit angry, or if it's to take it a little bit personally and think, I can't believe that guy's beating me, I'm definitely going to get him back. These things creep up on you in poker because it does push your buttons and it can cost you your win rate. So what do we do about it? Well, after my night of shame, the poker one, not one of my many other nights of shame, another video maybe, I sat myself down and gave myself a good talking to. No, I actually did for one of the few times in my life. And the good news is you can now use what I learned to reduce the impact of your emotions in your game and hopefully almost eliminate it. So I've turned it into some keys to tilt prevention. And if you follow these keys, if you do this exercise, and I'd recommend you do this, whether tilt's been a problem for you or not, like I said, every poker player should do this because we all are human beings. We all have this weakness of getting emotional about things that we shouldn't, and it doesn't help our poker ever. So key number 1 is to understand the battle space. I'll explain that in a minute. Key number 2 is to learn your triggers, vitally important step. Key number 3 is to condition thinking clearly when you play poker. And the last key is to take and use breaks. So let's go through them and it'll build into a little system for you here to get on top of your emotions when you play. So the first thing is to understand the battle. You can stop emotional frustration before it starts by understanding poker better. Like I've already said, and it's worth repeating, you are playing a small margins game where great players only have a 10% edge a lot of the time. You know, if it gets to 20, it's a really abnormal game situation a lot of the time. Maybe if you're heads up against a really weak player, you might be able to do a bit better than that. But generally speaking, day to day, a great player is only going to have a 10% edge. A normal, competent winning player will have between a 5 and 10% edge. That is a small difference between winning and losing. So what that means is to win, you have to lose a lot, right? So if we've got a 10% edge, that means a lot of the time we're actually going to be losing. A top tournament player will bust 80% of events they enter. They're only going to cash 20% of the time. A top cash player will lose 40 or even 45% of their cash game sessions. They might be able to get that down a bit, but you're still going to be doing a lot of losing, whatever poker you play. So it's really, really important if you're going to do well in this game, if you're going to enjoy this game, and if you're going to keep control of your emotions and play your A game more often, that you have to accept that to win, you must lose. Losing is part of poker, I'm afraid. And bad players have to win sometimes for there to be games. A very important concept, right? There's no good getting frustrated when a bad player wins, because it's just the way the game works. This is not a running race, right? Where if you're the fastest runner, you're going to win every race. This is a kind of weird, messed up running race where the fastest runner is going to win slightly more than he loses, but he's going to lose a lot of the time. So accept that before you start. Understanding the battle in poker is a massive piece of preventing tilt or your emotions. Because if you accept everything I've got on screen right now and I've been saying, then you're not going to be phased when you lose pots or you lose hands or you have unlucky runs. You can just fall back on this and go, okay, I know this is part of the game. I'm happy with my decision making. I'm going to keep playing well. I'm not going to react to it. Speaking of reacting to it, key number 2 to preventing tilt is to learn your triggers. This is super important. I would say maybe a 20% of poker players ever think about this. You can think about it now using this video, and it's really going to help you out. So in order to do this, you need to be super honest with yourself. So prepare for some giving yourself a talking to and being honest with yourself. Take a moment. You can pause the video or do it after the video. But write down what annoys and frustrates you about poker. Now, what I want you to do is keep this specific to when you're actually playing. So not kind of when you're away from the table, big picture stuff, but when you're actually playing cards online or live, what frustrates you? What gets under your skin about poker? What is it that gives you that negative emotion? Is it just losing? Is it being unlucky? Is it being unlucky against bad players? Is it watching bad players play? Is it being card dead? Get as deep as you can, be as honest with yourself as you can, and really try and get to not just the surface thing that annoys you, but why does it annoy you? So not just losing, but why does losing annoy you? Especially if you know losing is going to be part of poker. Why does it still annoy you? There'll be different reasons for everyone. So it might be that you're too competitive. It might be that you're just too desperate to win. It might be you're playing at too high a limit. It might be that poker has, you're not accepting that poker contains that much losing. It might be a kind of entitlement. Lots of different possible reasons. Ask yourself, when you've played emotionally, so think about a time that you've played emotionally and, either you might have done something like me and gone on full-blown tilt, or even if you've just been a little bit upset or you haven't played your best, ask yourself, why has this happened? So to give you an example, for me, it was entitlement tilt. I don't know who invented that phrase. It's definitely in Jared Tendler's books, but it was that idea that I felt I was better than the limit I was playing at and my opponent, so I was entitled to win. Now, of course, it doesn't work like that. Even if I knew more about poker than my opponents, that doesn't make me better than them unless I execute. Only if I'm playing better am I actually better than them, right? So you can't just feel like you're entitled to win. And even then, you're going to get unlucky. You're going to have bad sessions. So poker is not a game where if you show up thinking, I deserve to win, you're going to end up a happy bunny, right? So my entitlement tilt was my problem, which I had to go away and address, and then combined with playing very late at night. So one of the reasons that I had my nightmare session was I was playing too late at night. It was something like 1 or 2 a.m. And even though I like playing at night, maybe you do too, you have to accept that you're not as in control of your emotions because your body just doesn't have as much energy and isn't thinking as clearly late at night as it is at other times during the day. And when I look back over my hand histories and my sessions, I was kind of shocked to find that a lot of my late night sessions weren't winning sessions. And I was kind of winning money earlier in the night and then giving it back a bit later on. So I had to change when I played. So find your triggers, then think about the early signs that show they're happening. Write down these signs and how to counter them, and have this with you when you play until it's conditioned out. So one of my signs was I would become frustrated with a particular player. I would think, I can't believe that guy's winning in this game. So that would be one of my early signs that I might be about to play emotionally. So look for all your early signs. Be as honest with yourself as possible. Write them down. Have you with them till you play, until you're conditioned out. So, maybe you might catch yourself, swearing out loud, saying a curse word out loud. Maybe you might catch yourself smashing your mouse or just feeling kind of frustrated. Write down whatever the signs are, and then when they come up, you'll be able to switch off, recognize them, switch off, take a break, do whatever you need to do to get rid of them. All right, key number 3 to preventing tilt and emotional play is going to be condition clear thinking. It's much harder to make emotional decisions if your brain is occupied in logical analysis, right? We're pretty bad at multitasking, and definitely two things that are so far apart. Clear thinking and logical analysis is a million miles away from being angry and frustrated, so it's very hard to do both at once. So get into the habit of talking through the action while you're playing cards. Now, if you play live, this is going to be a little bit trickier, so do it in your head. But think about your opponent's hand range. Ask yourself, okay, he's raised from... Actually have this dialogue going on in your head. Okay, he's raised from middle position. I know he's playing pretty loose. I think he's doing that with 30% of his hands. I could think about a re-raise here. If I do re-raise, it should shut out the blind. So yeah, I think I'm going to do that. Okay, the flops come down king high. That's a good flop for me to continuation bet. Have this dialogue going with yourself, because that will really focus your brain. After all, we're very simple creatures, right? So you need these little tricks. No shame in admitting that. I know I did. Use these little tricks to focus your brain on the action, and do that until you're automatically focused on the action and thinking clearly every hand. It's amazing what a difference that can make. If you find yourself, because you're losing or downswinging or frustrated, go back to this focus on the hand and your decisions. Keep in mind, clear thinking cures all emotional decision making. So you could even have in front of you when you play the question, am I thinking clearly? Am I making good decisions? If the answer is ever no, you need to stop and take a break. But condition clear thinking is super important. Sounds easy, but makes a big difference. And finally, I hinted at it right then, take and use breaks. Emotions snowball. I'm sure you know this from your day-to-day life as well as your poker. And fatigue increases, as I talked about with playing late at night over time. So the more you're in a negative state, or the more you're in a kind of state where you could be triggered into emotional play, the worse it's going to get. So it's vital to use breaks to assess how you're playing honestly, give your brain a chance to switch off and recover, give your emotions a chance to calm down, and quit if necessary. So what you're going to do from now on is use breaks to break, funnily enough, your emotional pattern and regroup. You're going to actually break from the game, switch off. I would recommend going and doing something else. Look at your phone, look at TV, look out the window, take some deep breaths, just for 30 seconds or a minute to kind of switch off from the poker game entirely, and switch off your emotions from it. I would especially recommend this if you suffer a bad beat or you're in the middle of a downswing and you've got losses on top of that in a session. Do that breath and refocus and disconnect from the game. It'll really, really help you out a lot. Build breaks in. If you're playing a cash game session, build them in. If you're playing tournaments, they come automatically. But make sure you're using your breaks. It can make a big, big difference. And I'd especially recommend a break after a big pot, whether you win or lose it. Even if you win it, because your emotions are really going to be high at that point. All right, if you put those things into action, I think it'll make a massive difference for you. Even if you don't have a big problem with tilt right now, do go through those steps, especially thinking about what does cause you to play emotionally. Often emotions are there without us ever really realizing, and they can, as I said, destroy the small margins you have in poker. All right, enjoy your emotion-free poker. I've now turned you into a robot. All right, maybe not quite. You're never going to be completely robotic, but hopefully not too far away when you actually play. Save the emotions for after the session. If you want more help with this stuff, get Tommy Angelo's book, The Elements of Poker, either of Jared Tendler's Mental Game of Poker books, or get my Winning Poker Blueprint course, which goes into more depth about the concepts I've shared with you today. Email me if you want that. Those books are also excellent for these areas. All right, thank you so much for watching this video. I really hope it's helped you out a ton. If it has and you'd like to see more, then hit the subscribe button for YouTube just underneath this video. Also under the vid, that's under the vid, you can leave me a comment. leave me a comment, let me know your honest feedback, but also let me know what else you're struggling with in your poker game so that I can make a video about it in future and help you out with another one of these. Now, if you're ready to take your poker game to the next level and get the results that you really want, then I've got something really cool for you. You can hit this link on screen right now. It'll take you over to my site, transformmypoker.com, where you can sign up for a free series of advanced training videos that will give you some step-by-step help with techniques you can use quickly to get the consistent results that you're after. It's really, really cool and it will really help you out. Hit it right now, sign up, and I can't wait to get some more quality training to you. Until the next time we speak, take it easy and run good, because that's the hard part.